Hey guys, Gus here and welcome to my review and painting tutorial on the new Games Workshop kit, the Imperial Knight. Right, so this kit, as much as I like a good Games Workshop bash, as much as I dislike the decisions made by some of the top management, as much as I dislike how GW fuck over their customer base on a regular basis, and as much as I dislike a fair number of the new kits, I have to admit, credit where credit is due, this kit is really good. I really enjoyed putting it together. It goes together like really well. I mean, all the parts are brilliant. In terms of the detail, I mean, I hear people going on about, oh, it's fantastically detailed and blah blah. Nah, well, the detail really is pretty standard for a polyurethane plastic sort of, tooled mold, really. It's kind of standard. So the detail is nothing remarkable, but it's how the kit goes together and what they do with the capabilities of making, plastic miniatures. And it goes together really well. And I have not had this much fun building a miniature for a really long time. So today I'm going to be painting it for gaming, which means I'm going to be airbrushing the thing and then using a bit of sort of hand painting afterwards just to get it done quickly, because I just want to get it done. And also, in addition to that, I'm going to be rigging up some LEDs. So that's going to be quite fun. So I've started to do some drilling and stuff, and also into the head to get the eyes glowing. Now, when I first saw this kit, with the leaked stuff, not really leaked, is it? Let's be honest. It's controlled by GW. But anyway, when I saw all the leaked stuff, I was like, yeah, you know what? Probably not going to get this. I'm not really overly interested. Then I went down the local gaming store, and I was like, I saw the new White Dwarf magazine, and some of the things that some of the guys were doing with the kit, I was like, that looks really cool. And the actual backstory really reminds me of BattleTech. It's kind of like a BattleTech rip, right? Because Imperial Knights were around since the 90s and they just brought them out again, so they were around before. But the background is like a BattleTech rip. But I really like it. Okay, it's a really cool background, and I was like, wow, this is freaking cool. So then I saw this, and I was like, that looks effing awesome. So I bought the kit for like, I don't even know how much it was, like 70 bucks or something, down 40k Gaming Collie in Colchester. Obviously they do like 20% discount and stuff. So yeah, I was like, you know what, sold. Absolutely brilliant. And as a matter of fact, just a bit of ad placement for you, they are doing 20% online discounts, and over 100 quid you get free delivery. So you know what that means? Get two of these bad boys and you get free delivery, which is freaking awesome. So I'm actually thinking about getting some more from 40k online and actually starting an entire army of these things, because they're just so fun to put together, and I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of fun painting them. So anyway, I'll stop gobbling off and we can get on with the painting tutorial.
Hey guys, so the first thing that I'm going to do is base coat the entire model with the Model Mates black spray, which I find better than the other black sprays out there. Actually, it's my favourite, and it smells like caramel for some odd reason. So after I've base coated the entire thing, I'm then going to load my airbrush up with very, very thin down Vallejo Game Colour Gold Yellow. So I'm going to thin it down with a bit of water, because I find the Vallejo paints thin down much better with water than with alcohol. And then I'm going to put it into my Patriot 105 airbrush, keep it on about anywhere between 30 and 40 psi will be absolutely fine. And then I'm going to start sort of base coating, but with the transition up to dark on the most prominent edges, as you can see. And really it needs to be a nice solid coat of yellow. Really, it looks solid when I'm doing it now, but actually it could have done with being a bit more of a solid coat on the actual miniature. So I'm going to do it on the shoulder pads, and then I'm going to do it on the actual top armor piece, the armored carapace on top, so to speak. I'm just going to again do it towards the edges, the outer edges, the back and the front, and this is to create the flame effects later on by templating, and that'll become more apparent as the video goes on. So again, just making sure that I'm getting a nice smooth transition, which is very easy to do with an airbrush. a couple of minutes practice and you'll be fine. And again, every now and then I'll go away and I'll remove the excess paint from the airbrush needle with my offhand, and just to keep it spraying nice and smooth. And as you can see here, again, just really keeping that transition nice and smooth and getting a really solid coat of paint towards the ends. Now, I mentioned earlier on about thinning the Vallejo game color with water. This is quite important, particularly with the Vallejo colors. I found when thinning them with isopropyl alcohol, as I do with some other acrylic paints, when it comes to actually cleaning the paint out with some water, it like coagulates. So it's quite important, I find anyway, with the Vallejo paints. Maybe I'm doing something wrong with the paints, but just thinning with water works absolutely fine. And as you can see, I'm not having any trouble whatsoever. No spurting, no splattering. It's spraying very, very well. So great for that. Another use for Vallejo game color. Then I'm going to take some of the Minotaur Paints White, and this is simply to add a very, very thin highlight to the extreme edges of the yellow, again to tie in with the templating for the flames later on. And when I do this, I normally start with the areas that actually aren't going to be white, if that makes sense. So the lower edges of the armor plating, not the actual yellow surface itself, just to make sure that the spray is coming out right, and then I'll move the airbrush up ever so slightly just to catch the bottom edge of the yellow. And that way I don't sort of overcoat the yellow and add too much white and make a mistake. So now all I've done is I've drawn out some very, very basic flames on some masking tape, and then what I do is I stick the masking tape to a piece of magazine paper, and this way it helps the actual tape detach once I've finished cutting out the template. If you stick it to like normal paper, it'll just stick and tear itself or tear the paper, and it just becomes an absolute shitting nightmare. So just a piece of glossy magazine paper, draw a really sort of, just hand-drawn flames will do absolutely fine. You just need to make sure that the curves are all in there, and the curves are nice and accurate and not jagged, and the tips of the individual flames are nice and sharp and not so rounded. And as you can see, I just used some scissors just to cut them out to create the template. So it's very, very simple to do with the actual masking tape. And the reason I'm using masking tape, of course, is because when I apply it to the actual miniature, the glue itself is not acidic, so over time it won't erode the paint. And also it can be removed easy without chipping or damaging the paint. It might chip it or pull a little bit of paint off, but it's not too much of a train smash, especially if you want to do weathering and things like that. So as you can see here, nice sharp knife with a thin blade, just to remove the masking tape from the actual newspaper, sorry, the actual magazine paper. And then I'm just going to sort of size up the flames and decide which ones I think will look right on the individual pieces of armor, being sure to stick the very bottom of the flames where the raised armor pieces on the edges connects with the actual armor plating. So now this is a color called Angelic Blood, which is actually one of my favorite colors from the Minotaur range. I find it very, very good. It's almost like samurai armor red. So as you can see, I've stuck down the template now, and I'm just working from the dark to the light, and this ties into the reason why I left the raised areas darker, because when you coat over with the Minotaur paints, because they're very, very thin, it'll leave the underlayer showing. So in this way, I'll only put a little bit of paint on the black and actually put more red paint towards the flames. And this way I get that dark to light transition. And of course, when I remove the templates, I get the flame effects. Now, this is a very, very basic thing to do. It's quick to do. It's easy to do. And again, this is just a miniature for gaming. So if you wanted to, you could go back in with a brush and really push those highlights and make it really sort of, catch the eye with the very extreme highlights and, and all that sort of stuff. So you could go back and rework it with a brush is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to do the same again with the other shoulder pad. Again, a very, very thin coat of red over the black areas and then going down towards the flames. Now on the actual top of the carapace, as you can see here, I made a bit of a mistake and I left the railings on, because when I assembled it, I assembled the railings. Really what you should do is not assemble the railings, leave them off and then do the templating. and then put them back on. Now, as you can see here, what I've had to do is do it, separately in thirds. So it's not too much of a train smash, but not too much of a problem. But you just have to be careful. So I'm now pressing down the actual template with the rounded edge of a paintbrush, just to make sure it gets in all the little nooks and crannies and gets absolutely flat. Because, of course, if the template is not entirely flat, you're going to end up with overlapping from the actual airbrush underneath the template, which is not what you want. You want a nice, sharp, crisp edge to the flames to really make that patterning stand out and make it look proper, for want of a better term. So here we go. I've had to break it down into thirds, a bit of an inconvenience, but not too bad. So with this then, as you can see, I'm holding it with my hand with other glove on, which is not too bad in this case, because later on, not in this tutorial, but if you wanted to, you could add in battle damage and things like that. So removing a bit of paint with your fingers or with the templates actually adds to the effect, and you can go back in later on and you can highlight those little chips just to make it look like proper battle damage, and weathering and tearing, and to the actual paint surface and all that kind of stuff. So as you can see here, the transition is really starting to spring out now from the dark to the light with the red. And again, this is a great color. I really like Angelic Blood. It's fantastic. I had threw a bit of a wobbly through my teddy bear earlier because I was actually trying to use another Minotaur paint called Irradiated Yellow on the yellow surfaces, and it was crap. I threw my fucking teddy. I went berserk. Anyway, so I had to kind of wash the miniature off and redo it for the tutorial. So there we go. So now with these armor plates, what I'm trying to aim to do is the light would kind of catch the central piece of the armor plate, because the edges recede inwards into the actual body of the miniature. So all I'm doing is I'm spraying the red directly down into the center of the raised area, and then I'm just blending it with the airbrush ever so lightly down towards the edges and making sure that that middle color is nice and solid. And again, this is sort of the headpiece that's just the headpiece of armor that's just above the skull of the miniature. And I'm doing the same thing again. The downward edges are going to be dark, and the raised center is going to be light. So this is the basic transition on the armor here that I'm going for. And you'll see I'll do the same thing with the legs. I'll make sure that the brightest points of the red, or the strongest points of the red, are towards where the light would catch it. So on this gigantic chainsword arm thing, I'm going to do the same again. So the red will be towards the top raised edge of the actual miniature. And just to point quickly, you could see my mask into the frame there. Make sure when you're airbrushing, guys, I would highly recommend that you use some sort of respirator, some sort of respiratory protection, because of course the paint is aerosolized and it's in the air, and you don't want paint in your lungs, because paint in your lungs is not a good thing. So just a bit of a safety point there. So yeah, as you can see, spraying up towards the raised areas of the chainsaw just to get that basic transition. And I'll go in later on and I'll pick out some of the detail areas. So again, this is the groin plate now, so I'm going to do the same thing again, just out towards the raised areas, and also, as you can see here, the lower edge of the actual lower piece of the groin plate. So because it's kind of raised and it kind of comes forward, so the light would sort of catch the end of it. So again, that's why I'm doing the strongest red tones there. And so here we have the leg armor plates. So the way I'll do this then is each one of these pieces of sprue with the plates on is like the right and the left leg respectively. So the right leg is kind of back and behind the miniature, and the left leg is kind of standing forwards. So with the left leg, because of the angle, the lower edges of the armor plate would catch the light, and the right leg, because it's back behind the miniature, the upper edges would catch the light. So as you can see here, I've kind of showing you which way the legs would stand. So this would be the left leg, and the edges would be down towards the bottom as the light would shine down the armor plates. And I was a bit naughty actually, because after this I did a step and didn't really show it, but it's the same principle as doing the white for the flames as you saw earlier. So I just add a tiny little white highlight using the same white as before, the Minotaur white, after I finish the step, onto those prominent edges where the light would catch it. So it's an extra little bit of highlight, just to make it shine just a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to keep on going with this here and make sure that the paint is catching all the right edges. And then we have this gigantic melter gun thing. I don't know what it's called. I haven't read the all the rules and stuff yet. So with this one then, I'm going to make sure that the bottom edge of the armor plate catches the light. And this is because of the angle that I'm going to pose the miniature. So I'm going to pose him with his gun up towards the sky. So he's going to be turning with his chainsaw down on his left side and his gun right, his right hand up towards the sky, so the lower edge of the armor plate would be catching the light. And this is the shield on his body, and same again, just the lower edge. And if you purchase the miniature, you'll see the lower edge kind of angles outwards away from the miniature. So now I'm going to mask off some of the areas that I painted red, because I'm going to go in now and start doing the metallics. So as you can see here, I've just cut the edge of the tape, of the masking tape. It's the same tape as I used before for the flames, just to make a nice straight edge, so when I mask, it's accurate. The main thing with masking is you need to be very accurate. The more time you spend masking and getting it done properly, the more beneficial it is, and the better it looks really once you've finished actually spraying or airbrushing over the top of that. So I'm just going to go in and mask the other side of the chainsaw now, and I'm also going to go ahead and mask the armor plate on the melter, the gigantic melter gun thing. So with this now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with the miniature metallic color called Gun Alloy. Now this is a really interesting color because this color is it's kind of like got a blue sheen to it, as you can see here. It's kind of and it's really, really nice. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's a very, very good metallic color. But one of the things I've noticed with this, you have to be quite careful when you use this color. You have to do a number of thin coats, because if you do one coat that's too thick, I find that it pools very, very quickly, and because of the pressure behind the airbrush, it actually sprays the paint away from the direction of the nozzle. So you've got to be careful with that. A couple of thin coats, don't let it pool. So now I'm going in with some Agrax Earthshade, and I'm literally just pouring this straight into the airbrush. Now, I may go back in after this tutorial's done and re-highlight, because I think I may have done too much with this Agrax Earthshade. I did kind of 2 coats of this, which really I should have only done 1. So you spray this on a nice heavy coat, retract the trigger all the way back to open up the aperture at the front of the airbrush, and give it a nice thick coat. This is like a normal wash, like you do with a brush, except obviously it's much quicker and much easier with the airbrush. So this is going to pool into all the recesses, and because of the Agrax Earthshade, it's that nice brownish rusty tint, and it looks very appropriate on metal. It's that kind of like that oily gunge mixed with dirt that you get on gigantic machine parts like tanks and things. And I'm speaking from experience. That's what happens. It turns into like this rusty, oily, dirty gunge, and it kind of pulls around the miniature. So I just did the same there with the right and the left arm, being nice and careful, just making sure I catch the lower edges of the blades of the chainsaw, and also the all the mechanical parts, all the moving parts, and all the metallic parts. So I'm going to do the same again for the body. You don't really see that much of the body with this miniature. Once all of the armor plates are on, it's kind of covered. Most of it's covered, except for the back piece. That's probably what you see the most of, and a few little tiny bits at the front. But really, if you need to sort of skimp on materials, if you're running out of stuff, the body is not that necessary. It's mostly the legs and the arms. So that's just a bit of a side note there. And as you can see, my fingers are inside the actual carapace there. Lots of space, and you'll see later on why that's important. So now I'm going to go in and paint all of the edging, sort of the metal plates on the edging of the miniature, and I'm just going to use the Vallejo game color, the gunmetal metal. So with this then, I need to make sure that it's very accurately done. So you get in all the little edging and all the recesses. I took quite a bit of time to get this right, because it needs to be accurate. And one of the things when painting for gaming is keep it simple, but keep it accurate. The more accurate you are, it'll still look good. As long as you are accurate with your painting, even if it's a simple paint job, it'll still look good. So I took a bit of time with this, made sure that I get in all the little nooks and crannies and make sure that it's nice and accurate. So I went in and I painted all the little details. I want it to be metal. Oh, you can see my hair there. What a dickhead. So I went in and got all the little areas that are metallic. All the handrails and the railing on top of the miniature. All of the metal edging, both on the top carapace and also on the shoulder plates as well, as you'll see. And I got in and all those nice designs that are sort of overlaid on the armor plating, like those sort of metal fleur-de-lis that are on there. I got in and I got all of those. As you can see there, that sort of metal symbol in the middle, kind of like a cross fleur-de-lis kind of thing. I got in and I got all that detail around the edges. And it's quite important to do that, because later on you'll see why. I'll come back and I'll actually get in those edges with a bit of Agrax Earthshade later on, just to add in a bit of sort of weathering to the actual armor. Very basic weathering, nothing advanced. That'll be a separate tutorial later on. Sorry, but I digress. So yeah, so make sure you keep it nice and accurate with the actual edging, and then the same again with the leg armor plates, making sure it's done very accurately, very neatly, all around the edges. And as you can see now, I've actually put my glove on, because the moisture and the heat from your hands, if you're holding it for a very long period of time, which I am here, you can rub off some of the areas of paint. Like I said earlier, on the armor pieces, it's not too much of a train smash, because it adds to the what can add to the weathering effect and the wear and tear. But really, for the metal, because I've just got black underneath, I just wanted to preserve that for now, so I can come back and work on that later. Right. So I'm working on the right leg now, and as you can see, the stance of the legs ties into how I highlighted it before, with the highlighting to the various edges. So now comes the fun bit. Now I'm looking at some of the really kick-ass transfers that they give you, and I've gone for a horse theme, primarily because I own a horse. My wife likes horses, so that's just a choice. And I'll go back in later on for the separate tutorial and do weathering on all these things. But with these transfers then, it's very important just to wet the underside. Don't wet the top, because that can apparently get rid of the glue and wash the glue away that's on these actual transfers. So just get the back nice and wet. You can paint water directly onto the back if you want to, or you can do this method. Then I've got a pair of pliers, grasp the actual transfers, making sure that it's come loose, of course. And then just very, very carefully slide it onto the actual area that you want the transfer on. And with this then, if you can, it's very easy to move the actual transfer around on the surface. As long as you wet the area around the transfer, it will slide quite easily. Then you can dry it off, the actual, dry all the water off, and you can apply varnishes over that. So as you can see here, just very, very gently dragging it onto where I want it to be. And then you can manipulate it and move it around. See how I'm wetting the edges now, and then you can shift it around to where you want it to be. And then it's very important afterwards to make sure that you apply an appropriate varnish. I use the Vallejo Game Color Satin Varnish. It's my varnish of choice, just because I like the satin finish more than the gloss. And I put that over the transfers, normally about 2 coats of that. And as you can see here, now I'm just doing some halving on the actual armor plates, just to make it a bit interesting. Instead of just having red, I'll then go in and I'll do some halving, maybe with white and with black, and you can do, all sorts of things. You can do hatching if you want, and what have you. You can do this with an airbrush, but I just chose to do it by hand, just using the Vallejo Game Color base white, I think it's called, which is a very, very thin white. So I put a white coat down, then use that afterwards, just to smooth the surface. And as you can see, I'm starting to put a whole bunch of various transfers on the legs, and all sorts. Just mix and match, and make it interesting. Just do what you want. Go crazy, basically, and it turns out great. So there we go. So that's the transfers. Then, as you can see, there's the Vallejo Game Color Satin Varnish, and this stuff is a lifesaver. It's absolutely great, because not only does it seal in the transfers, it removes that gloss sheen that makes transfers look like transfers. And normally it takes, again, about 2 coats of the stuff, nice thick coats to protect your work. And it's not too much of an issue if you want to go back and add chipping and stuff like that afterwards. It'll chip just fine. But I just like to add this just to protect things for the meantime. So add in 2 nice, good, solid coats of this stuff in. and it works great. And also it adds a very nice effect. I like the satin effect. It's not too shiny and it's not too matte. I think it looks good, so that's why I like to go with this particular this particular satin varnish. So going over there and covering all the areas, and that's just a quick show of what the miniature looks like with all the transfers. So it looks pretty neat, looks pretty alright for gaming. So I'm going to go back in now to paint the head of the miniature with the gunmetal metal. Wrong, it's not the gunmetal metal, it's the gun alloy from the Minotaur range. Again, it's got that really nice blue sheen. And with the head, I'm not going to shade it down too much. I'm going to spray it with this, and I'm actually going to go back in with the Agrax Earthshade and just start to add a little bit into the piping around the sides, but I'm actually going to leave the face and the skull as is, because I want it to stand out. I want it to be nice and shiny and have that really kick-ass metallic blue sheen that this metallic paint gives you, which I really like. This is like my new favorite metallic paint. It kicks ass. So as you can see, you're just going to go in and add a bit of shading to the piping and the sides, that detail on the sides of the head there, just to make that face really stand out. Now, of course, I went in much earlier and drilled out the eyes and drilled holes through the back of the head to add in the LED lights at the end, which we'll go into in a little bit. So I'll just take the arms off of the body here, and now what I'm going to do is go back in to the armor plates with the shading now, and all I'm going to do is just drag. It's almost like using controlled glazes. Is just drag a little bit of the shade into the recesses of the armor plate. This is not a necessary step. It does add like a little bit of weathering and dirt, like dirt is sort of collected into the spaces, but for some it does look a little bit untidy, so I'm going to go back in and tidy that up later on. But to be honest, for gaming it's absolutely fine, and this is being painted for gaming. So as you can see, what I mentioned earlier about going into the joints, into the joins where the plating joins with the main armor carapace, I'm just going to go in and get some Agrax Earthshade all along those edges, and also painting the lower pieces of the railings and the handles, and where the actual piping of the railing joins into the attachment points on the armor. I'm going to get some Agrax Earthshade in there just to add a little bit of, like this dirt and rust and all that sort of stuff collecting in those little spaces. So I'm going to do this on the main armor plate, and I'm also going to do it on the shoulders. So that's all done now. And these are the Model Mates weathering liquids, and there's two kinds. There's like an opaque one and there's like a normal one. So the opaque one is really interesting, and this is the opaque one, and I'll actually do a tutorial on these, a bespoke one, later on at a different time. And these are great because these dry opaque. They dry like it looks like the real thing. They're absolutely amazing. So the opaque ones, so here I'm doing the opaque like soot black, so like there's actual carbon collected on the metal, and it looks just like the real thing. So you just pull it on, and it dries that opaque color, and it is like that sooty, sort of dirty, collected, clumped, matted carbon that just sticks to the metal. So I'm just doing that all around the exhausts on the main body, just to add that really kick-ass effect in there. It's not so apparent because of the zoom, but up close it looks absolutely great. And I'm actually going to do the same thing on the melter gun, the actual heat shroud around the end of the melter gun as well, because of course if you're firing something that generates that much heat, you're going to get the same sort of effect. So that's what I thought. So I'm literally going to take it straight out of the pot. I'm going to apply it to where I want it to be, let it dry, apply another thicker coat towards the center of the holes, let that dry, and then it's almost like a stippling at the end. So you stipple it onto the actual metal to create that, the stippled effect, right? So the same again here on the shroud around the melter gun, exact same method as for the exhausts on the main body. And there's some really interesting ones in this range actually, which I'll show in a later video, for things like dirt, sand, grime. There's a whole bunch. I think there's like 6 or 8 different kinds. Not only this soot one, and the opaque ones especially are very good. They're like my favorite. Okay, so time to add the LEDs. This is just from that company you just saw. I don't even know what they called. You can just search online. I'll put a link in. And they're just a little control circuit board with a switch there. You plug in the power, and then the other side has got outlets for your various LEDs. And there we go. That's I just stuck them on with blue tack behind the head, and that's it, guys. That's the tutorial. Hope you enjoyed.